Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. On this episode, we've got the backwards running, pelvis thrusting, bill crunching Chicago phenomenons. And might talk a little hockey, might talk a little basketball. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So you want to see Dylan Sakura before he goes up to the bigs? You got it. Head on over to icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, I think we can say that we were very happy with the result yesterday.
Yeah, blowout win. You won a game you were supposed to. I think no real complaints here. Obviously, there are good things that stuck out. There were things that weren't great, but you know what? In the end of the day, you will enjoy the heck out of a 41-9 victory, and you know that the real test is coming up, and luckily they're heading into this real test on a high note.
Yeah, there's a lot of good, a lot of bad still to sort out, but it's always nice to be able to look at it from the perspective of you won by 30-some points, 32 points.
Yeah, and I mean, you were pretty much in control since the second quarter. Obviously, there was no scoring in the first quarter, but when you score 28 points, mostly on defense, against a really, really awful Bills offense, you pretty much knew you had it.
Yeah, so I want to jump into the Bears offense a little bit. I know that's been getting a lot of criticism in different media websites, on talk radio, around the water cooler, etc. But we'll jump in a little bit, but I've got some things I want to say about it. On the offense, Cohen ran 6 times for 5 yards, which is impressive considering that he had a 7-yard run. So that means take away that run, and he had 5 runs for -2 yards.
Well, you saw oftentimes he was going backwards.
That was really frustrating. I understand that a couple of times he ended up breaking off a big play by doing so. It doesn't always work out like that. And most of the time you go backwards, bad things happen.
Yeah, and you know what? If you're talking the difference between an actual run play and a punt return play, somebody on the radio said this morning, and it was a pretty good point, that unless you lose the ball, you fumble it away, no matter what, if you're returning a punt, you're going to be 1st and 10. No matter what. Now, on a running play, that's quite different. Especially if you're trying to fight for a first down and it's 3rd down, or if you're just at least trying to get in a decent field position. Now, here's the thing. I can't fully blame Cohen. I mean, yeah, there were times he ran backwards. That was frustrating. That was on him. But let's not forget that, in my opinion, what was the biggest negative of the game was the offensive line. The offensive line could not protect the run to save its life, and there were a lot of penalties. So, it's a combination of a lot of weird things, but, I would definitely say that it's more frustrating seeing him go backwards trying to make a move on a run play than it is on a punt return. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely 100% agree on that. And I agree with you, too, that the offensive line really struggled. And I'm not going to take anything away from Buffalo. That defense they have is a really stout defense.
It is.
And the front 7 they have is very good. But they they really dominated the Bears offensive line. Cohen, you take away that 1 7-yard run where he had to do all kinds of video game moves to get. He was 5 carries for -2 yards. Jordan Howard was 14 carries for 47 yards, which is 3.4 yards per carry. If you take away his 2 touchdown runs, one because it skews it because he ran like 1 yard, 2 yards, and the other one you take away was 18-yard run. He averaged approximately 2.3 yards per carry. That's not good.
Well, you noticed on so many Howard runs, they gave him the ball and they knew exactly where he was going to be, and they just built a huge wall in front of him and stopped him in his tracks. There was no open holes for him to go through, and I think that you got to give props to Jordan Howard on that 18-yard run, because that right there was showing what he can do as a power back. But you can't do that when you have 0 holes to run through and a huge barricade with no blocking.
Jordan Howard is a very good running back, but he needs something there. And he's not going to be Barry Sanders where he's going to break a tackle in the backfield for a gain. He's got to have either a hole or a cutback lane to get to. And once he gets past the first level, that's when he's a big bruising back. You just got to give him some sort of sliver of daylight, and the Bears offensive line didn't do that. And just the eyeball test is, look how under pressure Mitch Trubisky was in that game. And you're right. Charles Leno on his own had 3 false start penalties. We ripped the Jets last week for having 5 or 6 as a team. Leno had 3 by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was not good. I mean, this was the most undisciplined we've seen the Bears play in terms of penalties in general. Granted, some of those calls were horse crap, but those not holding calls, those calls against Leno, I mean, those were legit calls. Those were legit mistakes by Leno. And that's something that you have not seen the Bears do at all. They've been great in terms of false starts and offsides, but you saw it against Buffalo for whatever reason. It didn't cost them anything in the end, but it was noticeable.
Yeah, when you end up having to play a division game and you're playing better teams like a Minnesota Vikings, or when you play the Rams, you don't have all of that room, that wiggle room that you do against the Jets or Buffalo Bills. They will make you pay, and you've got to clean those mistakes up.
Oh, no question about it. I think that Matt Nagy's really going to buckle down on that because they are entering the true test of the season. I'm sure we'll get back to that in a little bit, but yeah, that's one thing that I would imagine they're talking about. Yeah, because, I mean, when you think about it, in terms of the offense, there wasn't much going on outside of a bad Mitch pick, and probably the worst play offensively of the game was when Mitch didn't throw the ball away and he got tackled and he lost the ball. That was probably the worst play by the Bears the entire game. But, I mean, it didn't do much. It didn't matter, but it didn't do all that much. Now, again, you can definitely point to the Bills having a pretty good defense. If you ask my opinion, I'd say this Bills team is kind of like what the Bears team was last year, but that offense is even worse than that Bears team. A good defense, but they're not going to win a lot of games because they're not scoring or they're making some bad mistakes. But who would you really say was the player of the game offensively? Because you can't say Mitch Trubisky was bad, because I thought he had some really nice throws on third down, several of them. The one to Trey Burton, the one to Anthony Miller, he made some great throws on third down, but he didn't rack up a lot of yards, and he only had 1 touchdown pass. There just wasn't a lot there to evaluate, and I think the offensive line was a part of that. And the other part of it was, when you think about it, in the second half, the Bears offense really wasn't on the field that much.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up a bunch of those points because a lot of those things were things I was going to talk about is Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. Who was the offensive player of the game? I don't know. I went through and I was like, all right, it's nobody on the offensive line. It's neither running back. Um, Mitch did okay, but you're right, there was those couple of bad mistakes that skewed it where you're like, I can't give it to him. So, I mean, I'm going to guess it's got to be Anthony Miller or Taylor Gabriel.
And yeah, and I mean, I guess maybe you could consider Trey Burton. I mean, he made 2 good catches, touchdown.
Yeah, that yeah, that's really all you can do, because you're right, and this was a really weird offensive game, and I'm not going to draw too much on it, like, oh, they took a step backwards or whatever, because when the defense starts scoring and the other team gets into a mode where they get one dimensional and um, your offense is not on the field consistently, you don't really get in a rhythm. You'll see that it's not just with the Bears, but with any team that has like a high scoring defense, uh, or team when they score a lot of points defensively, it it really throws a wrench in the rhythm that you're trying to establish as an offense. And I wouldn't trade those defensive points for offensive shots, but it's sort of the reality of it. Mitch Trubisky was 12 of 20 for 135 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 really bad interception. And that was a really bad interception that just, the explanation was it floated on him. And I went back and rewatched it when I didn't know. And I was like, I don't see this as being a bad route that somebody ran. I think that was an overthrow.
I mean, there was
it clearly
absolutely nobody within the vicinity.
Yeah, so it wasn't somebody just stopped a route short or ran the wrong way. It was definitely on Mitch, and Nagy said as much. He said it just sailed on him. But
Right.
honestly, is if you listened to Olin Kreutz and you listened to a couple of other people that were talking about this game prior to it happening, they all said the Bears are going to go into this game with a really conservative game plan because they don't want to they don't feel like Buffalo can beat them. They only feel like they could beat themselves. They didn't want to turn the ball over and give opportunities to Buffalo. They were going to let their defense do it. And that's sort of what they had. So they asked Mitch to be a game manager. And that's exactly what he was that game.
Right, you weren't going to get all fancy and tricky and all that. I think it was pretty evident with the game they played that they were just trying to manage a game. Now, yeah, they try to get cute with a few things, but you're going to see that from Matt Nagy. Yeah, I'm glad Olin Kreutz brought that up, and I love my guy Olin Kreutz. I think he's one of the best in the biz when it comes to analyzing. I think he was spot on with that. I mean, look, here was the only prayer the Bills really had in beating the Bears was them playing defense and just keeping them in the game. And through the first quarter, it was scoreless. And you're thinking, okay, this is kind of the scenario we didn't want to see because you weren't afraid of them putting up points against you. That just wasn't going to happen. But you thought, okay, well, if they're in the game and it's really close, one stupid mistake by the Bears could make a huge difference. Now, the second quarter completely ended the game. I mean, it was pretty much over when Eddie Jackson took in that fumble for a touchdown. But yeah, I mean, that's the Bears, I thought, managed the game well in terms of the circumstances. It was smart that they didn't play Khalil Mack or Allen Robinson. You pretty much knew that was going to be the case. I mean, this was probably maybe when they play the Giants, but this was probably the biggest gimme game of the season. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would say that's fair, even more so than the Jets, because the Jets at least have a quarterback that can do something. But
Right.
the Bills game plan was basically, we know it well because it was the same game plan that Fox used for 3 seasons when he was with the Bears. It was try to keep the game close defensively and go slow and steady on the offense and play the field position battle and hope you can keep it close long enough where they make a mistake and you can capitalize on it. And it rarely works when you have a bad team. And Buffalo's I feel bad because I don't think they're an awful team. I think they just have, when you're bad at key positions, it really takes its toll on you.
Yeah, and not just that quarterback right now. I mean, I feel bad for the dude, but Peterman is bad. Bad, bad, bad. Though, I thought in his game against the Bears, he threw those picks, but I can't really blame him for some of those. Those weren't really his fault. I don't think that his team really helps him in the matter. And I mean, I'm sorry, but Kelvin Benjamin, that's kind of a waste of a talent because there is talent there, but I don't see him bringing out that full potential right there. And it showed in the Buffalo game. It was kind of cringeworthy seeing him try to play out there. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that was kind of my take on that.
It's funny. I feel like you are actually looking at my notebook with my notes in it because I wrote the same thing. I was like, the guy has all kinds of talent. He's got the physical attributes. He's got the talent. And it's just like he doesn't care. Like he was out there jawing, but then he just didn't do the things he was supposed to do. And I'm like, man, if I had this guy's, talent level, like I would be, a Pro Bowler because that guy has it all. He just doesn't want to work to take it to that next level. And that's sad. That's really sad.
Even Joniak on the radio was talking about that. Not in the words we're using, but there was a play. It was in the second quarter, and Joniak goes, well, it didn't really look like he was doing much to try to get that ball, but he was the intended target, and it's incomplete. So even he was kind of saying that it didn't look like he was doing much out there to try to really get it. I just think that's a shame. And, he was in Carolina, and he had an elite quarterback throwing to him, and he didn't like that situation. So here he is now. It's just too bad.
Yeah, it's completely too bad. But yeah, sort of back to the Bears' offense is I did like the game plan where you were going to go the conservative approach, but it was conservative with, I guess, some aggression. They were willing to take some shots downfield. Under previous regimes when the Bears were conservative, it was, either run, punt or run, pass, punt. And, when the pass happened, it was they would throw it between, 3 yards shy of the first down and 1 yard past the first down, and that's all you were getting. They were at least pushing the envelope, but trying to do it without putting themselves in the risk of making mistakes and allow Buffalo to stay in the game that way. But it ultimately looked ugly and from any number other than the score. If you look at total yards, Buffalo outgained the Bears 277 to 177. They outgained them in passing yards 180 to 113, rushing yards 97 to 64, first downs 22 to 11, and the Bears had more penalties 14 to 10. But where the damage happened is that the penalty yards is the Bears had a lot more penalties, but Buffalo had 163 yards in penalties, and the turnover battle was 4-1. That's that's something you can't do when you have an anemic offense and a bad quarterback. Can't turn the ball over 4 times and expect to win.
Especially when 2 of those turnovers were for 6. I mean, that's 14 points essentially right there when you make the extra kicks. And what I was going to say about the other thing that you mentioned with the penalty yards, I think it's pretty clear that some of those deep balls that are thrown, and this is not just the Bears, but somebody made a point on this also on the radio this morning. Those deep balls with a mismatch like Anthony Miller, you can throw those and slightly overthrow them, and you'll get those yards from a PI. It's like I think there was 2 passes that Mitch threw that were deep that got PI calls. Clearly a mismatch, but you got your free yards and you moved into the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you said that Mitch went downfield, because if you listen to Bill Barnwell from ESPN, Mitch only does dump-off passes and screen passes.
Yeah, exactly. And you didn't see a lot of that yesterday from the Bears.
No, and I'm curious to see after he wrote that what Bill Barnwell had to say about it, but I can't because he blocked me because I called him on it. There's a Bears fan little club of how many of us got blocked by Bill Barnwell.
Oh man, that's like the Cubs fan clan of what was that guy's name? I can't remember his name, but he was a writer and he's blocked by almost everybody. I can't even remember the guy's name.
Yeah, we all got blocked, and sometimes it was people actually being, a little bit ugly, but sometimes people you're not correct, and this is why, and he just blocked people. He's got the thinnest skin.
Yeah. You know what I just tweeted out? You were talking about more conservative play calling. This was my tweet, and you might get a kick out of this. Nagy's more conservative play calling against the Bills was still way less conservative than old John Fox.
Oh, absolutely. Again, right out of my book, I wrote, the game plan was to be conservative but still take some shots. That's where Nagy and Fox differ. It's like you're reading my notes. It's great.
This is hilarious. And I swear, we did no mutual preparation on this. We didn't talk to each other. We just came in like we normally were and had our own opinions.
Yeah. But, again, with the Bears, it was they didn't have the ball a lot. You alluded to that before. And it's really hard to get some continuity on offense that way. But still, offensively, they need to get that power game running going, because that power run game is it's going to be really important if they want to win this division. This is a Midwestern division. There's going to be snow. There's going to be cold weather. They're going to need to be able to run the ball north and south effectively come the winter months. And that's one thing where this offense is lacking.
Again, I think my biggest concern with that is the offensive line. It's just, I think if you get just even slightly better blocking, you'll see the run numbers go up. I really do. Because every time you saw Jordan Howard did get even the slightest of hole, you saw the way he was able to power through and have an effective run. It's just when he has nowhere to run. So I think my biggest legitimate concern about this team, outside the inability to pass rush without Khalil Mack, is the offensive line.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. It doesn't help that Kyle Long, after that injury, which I'm glad is not as bad as I thought it could be. I thought it was going to be a knee. It turned out it's a foot ligament. But he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. They put him on injured reserve, so he can return still at the end of the season. But right now we're playing in his position. They were rotating in different series, either Eric Kush or Brian Witzman. And you're like, Brian Witzman, who the hell's that? Well, he's been on the team for about a month, not even a whole month. But he played for the Chiefs last year, so he's familiar with Matt Nagy.
Right. I don't really know much about him, so you got the scouting report better than I do. Yeah.
But shifting over to the Bears defense, the good on that was obviously the turnovers they caused. Kyle Fuller was involved in all of those interceptions. He leads the NFL in interceptions. And
only he had one more. I'm sorry.
If there's so many people that were down on him, the Bears re-signing him, but he has been a rock. Other than those 2 touchdowns where one was a perfect throw and one he just didn't get his head around, he has been an absolute shutdown cornerback this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I would argue that he was player of the game defensively, or at least one of them.
Yeah, he was my defensive player of the game.
I think he'd be my A defensive player of the game, and like my second would probably be Eddie Jackson.
Yeah, Eddie Jackson
probably
played really well. Roquan Smith played really well. Both inside linebackers played really well. I thought Leonard Floyd had a great game. He was.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But the front seven was an absolute brick wall versus the run.
It was beautiful. It was a thing of beauty. Their running backs couldn't even get positive yards half the time. And that is probably the most underrated strength of this Bears team, is how they are able to just shut down the run. And with that, they forced Peterman to throw more, and you saw what happened.
Yeah, I mean, to put it into perspective is, if you look on the outside, the Bears didn't have that good of a game. They gave up almost 100 yards rushing to Buffalo. And they gave up their first rushing touchdown of the year to Nate Peterman, which was set up by a really bogus pass interference call. But we'll get to more of that more.
I don't count that touchdown. That put an asterisk on that. That was BS.
But if you take a little bit of a deeper dive into it, Peterman was the leading rusher with 46 yards rushing. Of those 46, 24 of them came on a Hail Mary run before the half. When I say Hail Mary run, if you didn't see the game, they were well within the distance for him to be able to throw it into the end zone, but instead he tried to run it like 40 yards into the end zone, and he was surrounded by like 5 Bears and came up like 15 yards short. So he got 24 yards on that Hail Mary run of his 46. If you take away that run, Peterman averaged 3.1 yards per carry, and mostly they were running for his life, where he just avoided a sack and fell forward. If you take away Chris Ivory's 118-yard run, which is his only big one of the day, he ran 6 carries for 18 yards, which is 3 yards per carry. And Shady McCoy, who is, one of the better backs of the last generation, ran 10 times for 10 yards. That's a 1 yard a carry.
Yeah, he did. He was stopped cold.
He was the guy I was actually afraid of. I thought that they were going to screen past the Bears to death and short dump offs to him and let him, do something. And the Bears, shut him down. 10 carries for 10 yards.
I mean, I think that was some of the best run defense they've played all season. They had nothing. Most of that was either on that quote Hail Mary run or in garbage time. I mean, in the first half, I'd like to know how many rushing yards they had in the first half before that Peterman run. It probably wasn't a lot.
Yeah, I didn't break it down by half, but eye test, it didn't look very much.
No, it was great to see.
And you didn't get a lot of pressure on Peterman in the first half, but I mean, you sort of didn't need it after a while because of the score. But in the second half, when you just really didn't have the threat of running and they had to pass, that's when you really got after him and got a lot of pressures on him.
And that's when they were starting to pick up the pace. You saw Peterman making a lot of quick throws, and that's honestly how a lot of coaches have tried to adjust to the Bears defense, is just quickening things up a bit. And yeah, he did a lot of quick throws. The Bears were able to adjust and put pressure on him. The raw numbers don't look great for the defensive line and the pass rush in general. But yeah, I mean, if you just watched the game, there was definitely pressure there. Now, this is where I wanted to get into Leonard Floyd. Obviously, he had the best game of his season, no doubt. But what we were still missing was him getting to the quarterback. Why did they draft him so high when they did? To get to the quarterback. So hopefully it's a step. But at least it was a step.
Again, right page out of my notes. Leonard Floyd played very well, minus getting sacks.
Like Kurt Fuller?
Kurt Fuller. But, here's my thing, is a lot of people are saying he's a bust. And, they look at is either a bust or you're great. But can't there be something in the middle? Can't you be somewhere? Isn't there a lot of gray real estate between being a bust and being great? Can't we just say that Leonard Floyd's okay, but they overdrafted to get him? Is that fair?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can have him be a solid player. It's just there's going to be a lot more criticism towards a guy who was drafted so high. I mean, if you would have gotten him in like the second or third round, that's a different story. But it's the fact that they traded up to get this guy. When you trade up to get a guy like that, he better darn be great. Or at least, a main contributor on the defense.
I actually wrote down, if he was a third rounder, how do we view Leonard Floyd?
We would probably say this is a solid find.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine, and if you believe Pro Football Focus, Leonard Floyd actually has a lot of quarterback pressures this season and last season. He just doesn't finish, and maybe if we see Mac healthy with Leonard Floyd healthy, we see more out of him. But I mean, at this point is. He's not a bust and he's not great. He's okay. He's okay, and it's just a guy that we overdrafted.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather him be great, but if he's at least going to be good, it's better to be good than be bad. Captain Obvious, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's much better to be serviceable than a bust.
Right, exactly.
But Nate Peterman did the Bears a lot of favors here. 4 sacks on him. It would have been a lot more if he's a lot more elusive than I thought he would be. But 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, and a whopping QB rating of 45.4. And the Bears' plan with him was they sent pressure. And they did press man coverage, and they weren't going to let short dump off passes beat them. And they were really aggressive at the line of scrimmage, and that's why the Leonard Floyd interception happened, is because Kurt Fuller, or is it Kirk Fuller? Couldn't quite hear it. But Fuller, he really was aggressive at the line of scrimmage, and hopefully he knew the rule and wasn't just, crap, I got a pass interference there. But he went in and, got in early on that play, caused the ball to be deflected up, and Leonard Floyd got a gift that he took back.
And you know what? Sometimes you got to get lucky. Sometimes good defenses will find ways to get lucky like that. That wasn't always Peterman's fault on some of those turnovers. They were just unlucky deflections, but when you're a good team, that luck will find you sometimes, and it's up to you to make the most of it. They were able to get those turnovers and make points out of them. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's true, right?
I mean, but sometimes, I'm not going to throw all those interceptions on him, and I'm not going to take all the blame from him, because sometimes when deflections happen or balls get tipped, if they would have been thrown better, they would have been caught. And I'd have to go back and really watch them, but I can't absolve Nathan Peterman of it because of his history of being an interception machine.
Right.
But I mean, I see a lot of people online and talking on the radio, where like, well, the Bears did it against a terrible team. Let's see them do it against a good team. Blah blah blah. Let me remind you, 1 week prior to the Bears playing the Buffalo Bills, the New England Patriots played the same Buffalo Bills team, and the score at halftime was 9-3. 9-3. And the score at the end of the third quarter was 12-6. That game didn't, I mean, it ended up being, 25-6, I think. But that game really didn't get decided. It was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. And it was basically what they were trying to do to the Bears. Stifling defense and chip away at offense. If you can get a field goal, if you can get good field position, get a field goal. And the Bears just weren't having any of it. Brady had, people are like, oh, Mitch Trubisky had a terrible game. Tom Brady had exactly 0 passing touchdowns against Buffalo Bills 1 week prior. And the Bills had 300 passing yards against New England Patriots. So the Bears gave up less total yards than the Patriots gave up passing yards to the Bills. So I don't want to knock the Buffalo Bills as much as everybody else or shortchange the Bears. It was, the Buffalo Bills are not a good team, but they were able to play, hold the Patriots down, and the Bears came in and took care of business.
Well, that's what you got to do. And look, I get it. This team still has to prove they're a playoff team. They've proven that they are a competitive team. But if you want to prove you're going to be a playoff team, you got to beat you got to beat the Packers, you got to beat the Vikings, you got to beat the Lions. That I understand. I totally get the takes in that context, but you can't really downgrade a good win like this. You take every great win you can get, and you got to give a lot of credit to the team that flat out played better, which was the Bears. The team that, they dominated the game essentially. And do you really think that the team of 2-3 years ago would have done that? No, not at all. So you got to take these wins, no matter who they're against. You got to be happy about them. Can you put them in perspective a little bit? Sure, but you still got to be pretty happy with what you see.
Yeah, my only worry about this game is the Bears are going to be complacent and be like, well, we just dominated this team, and they feel like they don't need to fix things going into next week's game against the Detroit Lions. And, I don't think you should judge this team week by week. I think this is a team you need to judge quarter by, season quarter by season quarter, or by week from last, the same point last year to the same point this year. That's sort of how you have to judge them. And this team really needs to have a lot of mirrors in Hallis Hall, and they need to take a deep look at them because there was a whole lot of things in this game that they needed to fix. You need to clean up a lot of penalties. I know most of those pass interference were either phantom or ticky-tack. You can't have those against a team like the Lions because the Lions got a bad beatdown yesterday, but they are a much more balanced team than the Buffalo Bills or the New York Jets. And you're going to have to play better if you're going to beat them. So you got to clean up those pass interference penalties. You got to fix up those offensive line penalties. You can't have, not protect the ball and run around like a goofball with as a quarterback. You can't have negative or somebody running backwards. So there's a lot of things that they really need to clean up. And so hopefully, Fangio and Nagy have them go in and prepare this game like they just got their asses kicked. Because a team that's consistently good, like the New England Patriots, they prepare every single game like it is the Super Bowl. Whether they're going in to play the Little Sisters of the Poor, or if they're going in to play, the Los Angeles Rams or the New Orleans Saints, is they are prepared and they are mentally ready to play, and that's what makes them competitive year in, year out, game in and game out, regardless of who's injured, regardless of anything. And that's something that the Bears need to get to a point of being on that level. And they're a young team. They're still learning the system, which are negatives to that. Make it a little more difficult, but they really need to go in and prepare for this game like they just got their asses kicked, and this is a must-win game against the Lions.
See, I see this team being more focused than maybe in teams past. That's my optimistic way of looking at it. Now, look, they're going to be playing a Lions team that they really need and should beat. They really have to beat these guys. I think that them being prepared is less of a worry than it has been the past few years. I mean, let's hope that's the case. So I'm not too worried about that, but yet I always worry about these division games because we've had such crap luck with them. I mean, I shouldn't say luck. They haven't been able to beat their division. They haven't been nearly as good as they have been now. But again, this is going to be the true test. Can they handle the pressure of this test? And I think it sucks that they now have to play the Vikings on Sunday night and then go play Detroit on Thursday morning. I think that sucks.
Yeah, that really sucks. The Bears game against Minnesota 2 weeks from yesterday got flexed. So it is going to be a Sunday night game replacing, I think it was
a match nobody cares about, probably.
Yeah, it was a matchup that looked good going into the season, but I think it was in Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, I think.
It was something like that.
But this game is a much more appealing game at this point. So they flexed it. So the Bears are going to have to play Sunday night and then turn around and play a noon game on Thursday, which actually in their time zone is an 11 a.m. game because it's being played in Detroit. So you play in an 11-day span. You play Detroit twice and Minnesota. And these are division games. So essentially, each one of these games is 2 games in itself in the standings. So you need to win these games. If you go back and look at the standings now compared to if Kyle Fuller would have intercepted that pass against Aaron Rodgers, as it stands right now, Bears are in first at 5-3. Vikings are second, 5-3-1. Packers are third at 3-4-1. And the Lions are last place at 3-5. You make that interception, and the landscape looks a lot different. Bears are 6-2 in first place. The Vikings are 5-3-1 still. The Lions are then in third place with the same 3-5 record, and the Packers are in last place at 2-5-1. That suddenly becomes a much different race, just winning that one game.
Which is why I fear that we're going to be kicking ourselves by season's end, just like other seasons they were in a playoff mix and didn't make it, and say, well, that one game, if you just would have won that. But, I'm not going to go there yet. We got to see what happens first. Believe me, I constantly think about if the Bears could have beaten Miami and beaten Green Bay. You lose to the Patriots, whatever. That didn't really bother me. But you win those other 2 games you should have won. I mean, they would have complete control of their own destiny. You would be at, 7 wins? You'd be 7-1. You'd be 1 win away from 500. And the way I see it now, if I adjust the scenarios to what it actually is, because what it actually is all that matters, they're 5-3. 3 more wins guarantees them a 500 record. There are teams on the schedule that you think the Bears should probably beat. And I think that getting to at least 8 wins is not really much of a concern. I think if they go 10-6, that could at least get them in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, I just want to see this team in the playoffs at this stage of the game. Maybe they get a wild card. I don't know. personally, and not to be Debbie Downer here, my money would still be on the Vikings winning this division, to be completely honest with you. But just in a playoff race, you want to see them make the playoffs. And look, here's what I think would be the ideal scenarios. If you look at the rest of your schedule, you have 5 games against the NFC North. If they could somehow go 4-1, that pretty much locks you in, right?
I would think so.
If you go,
Yeah,
that's
and my
acceptable.
point about, saying what if Fuller intercepts that, what the schedule or the standings look like differently. It wasn't, like, oh, what if, but just showing how one game in your division, winning versus losing, can just completely change the landscape of it. And that's why these next 3 games are just absolutely crucial, and they're going to define your season. If you win all 3 of these games, because you figure, all right, you win these 3 games. I mean, if you do win these 3 games, you have to figure they're going to beat the 49ers because that team's not good. You're going to figure they're going to beat the Giants because that team's not good. And that's 5 wins right there. That's at 10-3 with 3 games left. Even if you lose the next 3 games, you're still 10-6. So these 3 games are absolutely crucial because if you lose all 3 of these, or you go 1-2, suddenly you go from 5-3 to 6-5. It's not nearly as good of a record there.
Right. And your chances of winning the division would probably be not down the toilet, but it would sink pretty low. The way I see it is, this would be, I think, for me, the most ideal scenario. If you could beat Detroit and the Vikings at home, if you get those 2 wins, then that Thanksgiving game doesn't seem as huge. That brutal having to play Thursday morning after Sunday night. If you can at least get those first 2 wins, then while you want to win every division game you can, I feel like that would take a little pressure off that Thanksgiving game.
Yeah, I don't want to, I don't want that pressure on that game. You're right. I absolutely don't. The only,
Especially Thanksgiving is my day to relax. I don't want to be stressing out about the Bears.
the only good thing about, I mean, not good thing, the only saving grace about the Bears having to play on short rest going to Thanksgiving is the Lions do too, and the Lions have an equally tough game the week before. They're playing the Carolina Panthers, but it's a noon game, so those 7 hours do mean something. But at least it's not like they had a bye week and then go into playing playing in the Thanksgiving day. Is they're going to be playing the Sunday prior as well. So they've got a tough game, and the Bears got a tough game, and then they play each other. So, man, the Lions got a tough, block of games here. They went Seahawks. Vikings, Bears, Panthers, Bears, Rams.
Yeah, that's a tough schedule. And the weird thing about the Lions is they've beaten Rodgers and Brady this year and beat them pretty good. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, the Lions are.
But at the point we're at, you Bears got to beat them. I'm not saying that, but it's weird.
Yeah, here's the Lions. They got smoked by the Jets, 48-17. They lost to the 49ers. Then they killed the Patriots, then lost to the Cowboys. They beat the Packers pretty good. They beat the Dolphins pretty good. They get crushed by Seattle. They get crushed by the Lions. So, who is this team?
You mean the Vikings?
I'm sorry, the Vikings, yeah. Looking at it, reading it wrong. Yeah, they got killed by the Vikings and gave up 10 sacks. Who is this team? Who are they?
Well, them trading away Golden Tate was, I think, their way of saying we're looking for the future. But here's the thing. I think the Bears have to beat the Lions. The Bears are, on paper, by far the better team. I also don't think the Lions are as bad as some people are saying. It's really hard to get a grip on who they are, which is why they kind of still scare me a little bit.
Yeah, they do scare me, and the good thing is, you're right. Golden Tate is gone, and I think he's the difficult matchup for the Bears because he and Matt Stafford had a good rapport, and Matt Stafford is a quarterback that, when he's good, he's like a Jay Cutler. When he's good, Matt, he's really, really tough to beat. And when he's bad, Matt, he's throwing interceptions all over the place. He's very Jay Cutler-like.
Yeah, that's true.
And
look, you saw the Vikings sack him, 10 times this Sunday?
yeah, I'm hoping that Mac's return, it turns into another sack fest.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That's what she said.
It would be nice to see, another strip sack or two from Khalil Mack, return from injury.
Oh, absolutely. I will be so angry if they don't beat the Lions Sunday at home. If they beat the Lions Sunday at home and beat the Vikings and they lose on Thanksgiving, I can swallow losing that, but I think these next two games, if the Bears are going to show they can win the division, I think they have to win both of them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm looking at the Vikings. So
I would say if you win those two games and then you beat Green Bay at home, you've pretty much done your job, because outside of the game against Thanksgiving, your last game of the season is a division game in Minnesota. Now, if there was just a grace of awesomeness that had the Bears winning the division before week 17 and that game meant nothing to them, that would be awesome. I don't think that's going to be the case, but the stretch of division games, if you take away that 1 week 17, you win 3 of those, I think you're in pretty good shape.
I'm looking at the schedule. So the Vikings have a bye week this coming week. So if the Bears beat the Lions, they maintain first place in the division, obviously. But if the Bears lose, the Vikings will regain first place on a bye week.
Yeah, you don't want that.
That's the stupid tie. The stupid tie in the division is so annoying.
Well, that kind of screwed the Bears over in week 2013.
Yeah, it essentially counts as a half a win and a half a loss. So, the Bears are 5-3, and the Vikings are 5.5 and 3.5. So, the Bears are just up by games in the loss column. So the Bears need to take care of business, so they create a little bit of more separation from them and the Vikings.
Right. I think that the Bears are in a pretty good spot to at least have a winning season, but if there's one thing that the 2012 and 2013 Bears have shown us is winning seasons don't mean anything if you don't make the playoffs because you can't beat your division rivals. I mean, let's face it, that was the epitome of the 2012 and 2013 Bears. They couldn't beat the NFC North. They didn't go to the playoffs. The 2012 Bears were 10-6, but you lost a bad game to the Vikings on the road. You lost both games against Green Bay, and I'm pretty sure you lost a game against the Lions. So you can have a winning record, but if you can't beat your own division, then that's not going to get you in the playoffs. These games are just so important.
Yeah, if you can sweep your division, it doesn't really. What you have to do against anybody else is sort of inconsequential because you've set yourself up with such a cushion already that it's hard to overcome, because each of those division games almost counts as 2 games. And those games against a different conference, those are just sort of a wash. So it's you got to win these division games. You just have to.
And I'm sick of losing these division games because the last division game they won, I think, was that surprise victory against the Vikings at Soldier Field in 2016. And that was like on Halloween 2 years ago.
But just the last two thoughts I had about the Bears is Kevin White was inactive for this game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've seen the sad and dying career of Kevin White, breathe its last breath.
Yeah, I don't really see him having a huge role in this team going forward, which is a shame because I thought he was doing some nice little things, even though they weren't major. But if you feel he's not worth the roster spot, then you may have to just part ways. I mean, luckily they're going to get Allen Robinson back, so it's not like you're going to need a top 3 receiver going forward, as long as Taylor Gabriel's okay.
Yeah, he said he's fine. But, you're not going to cut him from this team, but it's just he's not going to...
I should say just not play him. That's what I should say.
He's just not going to play. I mean, he was inactive
right.
with Allen Robinson sidelined because of a groin injury. They elected to give those snaps to, Taylor Gabriel got more snaps. Anthony Miller got more snaps. Josh Bellamy got more snaps. And Javon Wims got that active roster spot. And Kevin White is just not there. And, he had every opportunity, I think, to earn time. And he just... I think you just have to call him a bust.
Yeah. But, that was a draft from a few years ago, so it doesn't sting as much. The main thing I really wanted to see was to avenge that just embarrassingly awful 2014 season. But, what are you going to do?
But the last thing I wanted to mention is my favorite well, I guess I get two more. One is the pelvis thrust. I thought it was hilarious.
Am I missing something? I didn't think it was that bad.
I didn't think so either.
But maybe I didn't see the right angle. I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. At least he kept the sack.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. But Moose Johnson was just mortified. Like, he was so upset by it. Oh my goodness. But, my favorite moment of the game, my favorite non-Bear scoring moment of the game was when Anthony Miller made that nice catch along the sideline, and Buffalo's coach was going crazy, running to the referee, making the juggling sign, like he was juggling the ball. And Miller ran up to him and just clutched the ball to show him, nope, I caught that. And he was just he clowned him. And I was man, I hope they don't throw a penalty. But they did, and he had possession of that. There was no juggling the ball.
Yeah, no, that was funny. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So is there anything Bears you want to talk about?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I don't think I had any more thoughts. I pretty much said my piece. I can't really think of anyone else who really stood out in the game. I guess my last thought is, I don't know about you, but as much as I enjoyed the second quarter, the rest of the game was kind of boring.
Oh yeah, it was really boring. I mean, it's nice when they score, but it just you sort of started feeling bad for Buffalo. They have absolutely great fans. They're great people. You see things when other teams challenge them, or they show up with money for what was it, Pittsburgh, where they donated a bunch of money to a charity in Pittsburgh, as a response to Pittsburgh calling them out. They do good things. Mm-hmm. They're good fans. They support their team, and you hate for their sake for lose 4th straight Super Bowls, and then deal with this terrible team. But they're great fans.
They're also sandwiched in the middle of major fan bases that are a lot bigger than
Yeah,
them.
but they keep it real, and they, that stadium was loud, even though there was no reason for their fans to be loud at all.
Yeah, no, you got to give them a lot of credit for that.
So big ups to the Bills Mafia. I think you're on the right track. You just need a quarterback.
Yeah, quarterback, maybe a few more weapons. But I mean, hey, like I said, that defense there is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really nothing baseball much to talk about. I don't really want to talk Gold Gloves, but there's a little bit of Blackhawks, a little bit of Bulls. I don't know which one you want to talk about first.
I kind of want to talk about the Blackhawks because I have a few thoughts on them.
Yeah, my first thought is this team effing sucks.
Ooh, coming out with fire.
Yeah, I mean,
look. No, go ahead. Sorry.
They can't bury scoring chances. They can't hold leads. Their power play stinks. They got special teams issues all over the place. Their defense sucks. I don't know what else to say about this team.
I try to not judge early on, and I try not to be too reactionary, but I think these last 5 games may likely be just reality settling in. They started 6-2 and 3. They were winning overtime games that they probably could have easily lost. The defense has been consistently shaky. The turnovers have been bad. The power play has never gotten it going. I mean, it hasn't been good in the past 3 years since their last cup, but this may just be reality settling in. And this team just isn't very good. I don't know what else to say. You got some great players. I think that it's great to see Jonathan Toews playing like Jonathan Toews again. I think Nick Schmaltz is the Leonard Floyd version of the Blackhawks this year. Kane is great. DeBrincat is great. Keith and Seabrook are old. The rest of that defense, half those guys probably shouldn't even be in the NHL. Corey Crawford is doing everything he can, but he is just he can't do it all on his own. You saw that game against their last game. Who was that against? The Oilers?
Calgary? No.
Calgary. They were outshot 8-1. And if it wasn't for Crawford, they should have lost that game 8-2 or 8-3. He can't do it all. He made some great saves, but he can't do it all.
Yeah, it's just infuriating to watch. At this point, Kane and Toews have to be the veterans on the team that you turn to. You don't need to go out and try to sign veterans to play with them. Kunitz, what's his role on this team?
The guy was a good player in his prime, but he's 40 years old. He's basically 40 years old now. I mean,
yeah, his last good season was 2013.
Yeah, come on.
If they're gonna lose, I want to see them lose with young kids. That's if you're gonna lose with young kids. I don't want to see you lose with old people. That's going down like Detroit. Play with the young kids. Let them get their learning in. So hopefully you figure out what you have and what you don't have instead of guessing. Time to call up Dylan Sakura. Sorry, bring him up. He leads Rockford in points and shots. You could use the scoring.
At this point, why not? You could watch Yoki Haru. You could watch Sakura if he comes up. You could continue to watch DeBrincat develop his kids. And luckily they have some good scores to learn with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. God, I hate ragging on Keith and Seabrook, even though Seabrook has actually looked a little better, at least recently. But what are you going to do with guys who are 35 and have a billion miles on them? You can't demand much from them, but you're stuck with them.
You can send him out there to run
That's
somebody's
about
head
it.
through the board. Yeah, that Keith play was bad. I mean, I don't think there was any sort of maliciousness to it. Probably why he didn't get a suspension, but it was still bad. He crushed that guy.
Honestly, I wasn't watching the first period, so I missed it. I know the only good thing that really happened was Tays getting his 300th goal, so big congratulations to him. He's obviously an all-time great for the Hawks. It just kind of sucked that it was under yucky circumstances is that they eventually lost. And, they were getting dominated in the third period and Crawford was making save after save. And you're thinking to yourself, it's just a matter of time before Calgary scores. Yep, they tied it. And then 10 seconds later, they take the lead. And then you're thinking, yeah, this game's over.
Yeah,
It stinks. It stinks to watch. And there's so many of the same problems from last year that even though I'm not trying to declare everything over, you're pretty much looking at the most likely fact that this is who they are, and that's not very good in an insanely good division.
yeah. I mean, I'm not. You're right. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but at this
You
point in
gotta
the
call it as
season,
it is.
is what can be done to make this team better right now. Is if you're going to say, well, they've got money to bring somebody in at the trade deadline, what player are you going to bring in to fix the woes of this team? If you're going to say, well, just give the kids some time to play, are they going to get that much better? Are Keith and Seabrook going to find the fountain of youth?
No. Father
The-
Time always wins. You can play decent for your age, but you're not going to be your prime.
You may, with your special teams problems, you may get streaky and score a few goals in a short amount of time, but those problems are going to linger and hang over your head all season long. They have for several years in a row now. This team is not good at special teams, is not good at defense. It's inconsistent at scoring, doesn't take advantage of all the scoring opportunities they have, and they're squandering the remaining years of a really good goaltender.
The question is, if it's like last year and it ends up being December, January, and they're clearly out of it, there's so much debate between fans and fans calling each other, no, you're crazy. But if they're way out of it, is that when you legit start thinking, let's sell everything we can and think completely about the future? Because I think you can conclude by that point, and I think you could pretty much almost conclude it now, that you're not going to salvage any cups with this core anymore by doing this half-assed patchwork stuff. It's not going to work. Look at the other teams ahead of them. Do you see them beating the Predators in a 7-game series in this current state? Do you see them beating the Jets? Do you see them beating the Wild even? Do you see them beating, heck, the Ducks?
No, not at all. And part of me says, yeah, absolutely. If they're out of it come the trade deadline, then sell anything that's not nailed down. But the other part of me says, is this the regime that you want to make all of those moves? Because honestly, do Stan and Q both come back next year?
Look, I think if you're way out of the playoffs this year, I think you got to move in a whole other direction. Thank you, Q, for the cups. You're going to be a Blackhawks legend forever. But I've said this over and over. Every coach has an expiration date. And even if he's not necessarily doing a bad job, This is a results-based business. A results-based business. If the team isn't winning, obviously the coach is going to feel the wrath. I don't think Q this year has done anything to lose them games. I really don't. Sure, some of the healthy scratches, non-healthy scratches could be controversial, but no matter what, I don't think he's lost you any games. But at the same time, when you go with a new scheme or you have a new outlook, sometimes you just need to bring in someone different. That's how sports is.
And if you're going to change general managers and you're going to part ways with Stan, do you want Stan to be the one that's selling off everything? Or do you want to leave all of that and those decisions to whoever's going to be the new GM? That's the question you got to answer.
Well, that's another, right. Yeah, that's going to be another big question.
If you feel that, Stan is going to be there next year, okay, then, you either give him the green light to sell it off or whatever you got to do. But, if he's a lame duck general manager, do you let him be the one that makes the fire sale? Because I don't think fire sale is the worst option. It's one of those things like ripping the Band-Aid off is you still, you'll still have pieces left to build around. It's just going to set you back a little bit. It's better for you in the long run. It's kind of like
fans are going to hate it, but you can look at so many teams in the NHL that refuse to do that kind of drastic move after their run was clearly over, and look what's happened to them.
Yeah, and
Red Wings.
But if you don't, if you feel like Stan is the one that you're going to lead you through that, then all right, you give him the green light. But if he is not, you've got to make that decision. Do you let him do that? And then make whoever the new GM is deal with that mess with no assets.
If I was going to see a big Hawks rebuild, I would kind of want a fresh mind in here. Because I want to see what this ownership... I mean, this is the first time Rocky Wirtz is facing this situation. Ever since he's taken over, he's known nothing but success. He is not really known building up a team. I mean, yeah, he was there when his father was running the franchise and Dale Talon was drafting these guys, but he wasn't the head honcho. When he took over, the team was already on the uprise. This is the first time he's seeing things go downward. Is he a Jerry Reinsdorf where he's loyal to his guys? Or is he going to say, look, business comes first. I feel like we got to make changes. Let's make changes. That's going to be interesting to see. If this is indeed a bad team and they're not close to the playoffs, we're going to see what this ownership is made of. And who knows? I could see going either way. I could see and fear that it's going to be kind of that whole loyalty thing. And it's like, all right, we still trust these guys. Or I could see something completely different and be like, boom, let's clear it all out and let's start over. I don't know what it's going to be.
And you got to ask yourself, are the fans more loyal to a player they love or to winning?
Here's the thing. I think that if you see popular guys get traded away, there is going to be a lot of uproar at first, but I think as time goes on, it'll kind of be accepted.
Change happens, and some, as long as it's change for the better, you roll with that.
Yeah. I think that if you're going to do a drastic rebuild or take a drastic turn of direction, you can't just sit there and kind of half rip the Band-Aid off and then maybe say, oh, maybe we'll put it back on, or we'll take some of this. No, I think if you're going to do that, you got to buckle down, you got to rip it off, and you got to determine what direction you're going to go in. My biggest fear is this team being stuck in purgatory for years to come. I don't want that. I would rather they clear as much as they could to rebuild a future than be stuck in purgatory. That is the last thing I want to see. If trading away popular guys means for a better future than being mediocre for a long time and keeping them, I'm taking the first option.
Right there with you. Absolutely right there with you. But the Blackhawks are definitely a team in transition, trending down. The other team in the city that's struggling right now, and hopefully it means that they're on the rise in the future, is the Bulls, and they are lousy too.
And I try to give them somewhat of a pass because they're not all healthy, but I mean,
4 of your top 7 players are out for more than a game or two. They're seriously out. But this team just isn't good. You're playing a bad Knicks team right now, and you gave up a 6-point lead with like a minute and a half left, and now
which
it's
they've done
overtime.
in multiple games. They can't close out games.
And then you have the Golden State game. And listen, I want to put it in their perspective. Is Golden State was going to kick your ass regardless. There was no way you were going to beat Golden State. 0% chance. Unless they had a promotion where let a fan play for the whole game. That was the only way. But if any of the players showed up and went out there, they were going to kick the Bulls' ass. But so it's not a measuring stick, because when you're a bad team playing a good team, it's not like a linear relationship where the number of points you lose by is how close you are to being better than them. It's kind of exponential. Is the Golden State Warriors are a historically great team, and the Bulls are a rebuilding team with 4 of their 7 best players injured. But so it's not really a measuring stick game per se, but you can't give up 92 points in the first half. You just can't do that.
You read my mind. Exactly. There was no way the Bulls were winning that game. But the way they lost was embarrassing. And you know what? They gave up 149, where outside of Thompson in the third quarter, the Warriors didn't even try. If the Warriors legit tried, they could have pushed like 180. And I know it's a bunch of kids and inexperience, but what upset me was the fact that it was almost no effort whatsoever to defend these guys. And you know what? The broadcasters, Stacey King, he was getting mad at that. He's like, how are these guys so wide open? How is this transition defense just standing there and literally doing nothing? That, I think, look, you can't blame it all on Coach Hoiberg, but I think everyone's got to share some responsibility there. That's a team effort right there, and everybody should take some responsibility in some form.
Absolutely. I don't know if Fred Hoiberg survives this. I think that might have been the nail in his coffin. I don't think they move on him in the middle of the season, because what good is that going to do? But that game is going to be one that when they evaluate his future, it is going to be front and center. Look at this game. And again, I'm going to repeat, it's not a measuring stick game, because you can't measure yourself as a rebuilding team to a historically great team. If you have a historically great player like a LeBron James, then sure, you can use that as a measuring stick. But when your best player is coming off of a serious knee injury and your second best player on the court is 19 years old, you're playing a historically great team who has a player who set a score or 3-point shooting record in that game, then like what do you really expect to happen? Like what did anybody expect the Bulls to do? And they, people will be like, well, I expected a better performance. I expected them to play harder. And what would they have done? Because they still would have got their asses kicked. Sure, you want to see them play harder and you want to see them really take pride in what they're doing, but they were going to get their asses kicked no matter what.
Right, of course. I'm not really angry about the game per se, honestly. In fact, it was almost kind of entertaining to watch the Warriors just clown with this team. And I'm saying this as a Bulls fan. But it was also pretty dang sad that the United Center was basically cheering louder for the Warriors and for Thompson than for the Bulls at one point. It was kind of sad. And in terms of Fred Hoiberg, look, I know he's a nice guy. He's a great college coach. I don't think he was ever a right guy to manage an NBA team that was legit trying to compete. I really think that next year they got to look at another option. I just think he's over his head. Now, granted, he's had rosters that weren't built to his system. He's had players that have been pains in the ass. And speaking of which, I know I said good things about the Jabari Parker thing, but it's looking more and more like a disaster. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but it's hard to manage that kind of stuff. But I think it's pretty obvious that it's not gonna be him managing this team in the long run.
I'm just excited to see this team when everybody's healthy and see what we have. Because, right now we're seeing Wendell Carter start to come into his own. He had his breakout game against the Nuggets, his coming out game. He's getting better and better every game, looking more comfortable. He's still 19 years old. Zach LaVine looks like he's healthy, and he can almost score at will. He's averaging, like 30 points a game. Got another 33 tonight. So he's just an absolute beast of a scorer. Markkanen is arguably going to be your best player. So when you get him on the court, and when you get, Valentine, you get when you get him back healthy, he's going to be an upgrade over of what you've had to play. When you get Dunn back, you're actually going to have a player that can play some defense. When you get Portis back, he was playing very well. You just hope that they can start to gel and you can start to see the semblance of a team rather than a bunch of young, good players, and that it can be our team that starts the chant of trust the process.
Yeah, you hope you see that when everyone gets healthy. But right now, it's tough to watch. At least Zach LaVine has been fun to watch. I mean, that's all I really got. Unless you like watching Cameron Payne.
Unless he's dancing, no. And Zach LaVine turned it over with 1 second left in overtime. Sweet. But yeah, Jabari Parker sucks. Like, the dude legit forgot how to play basketball. He looks fat, and he looks like he can't play basketball. He looks like one of those, and one guys that used to be good, and then he's 40 years old and fat and still trying to play. That's what Jabari Parker looks like out there, and it's sad. And I was excited for him to be here, and he's just bad.
Yeah, it's a disaster so far. It's ugly, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon.
No, I'm really curious to see what his role on this team is going to be when you have a healthy roster. When you've got Wendell Carter earning his playing time, when you've got Bobby Portis earning his playing time, when you've got Markkanen earning his playing time, where does Jabari Parker fit into that?
Not as well, probably in a limited role at this point. I mean, like I said, I liked the signing before. I thought there was some potential there, but so far it's not proven to be the case. And, what are you going to do? You're going to keep giving him chances later down the road, or are you going to play the guys that are going to be part of your core going forward? I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I don't really think you can move a Jabari Parker in that big contract. And, I mean, unless it's something where you can dump his contract as an expiring contract. But I don't know at that point if that's what the Bulls are trying to do. So I think you just sort of write him off, and as it was a chance you took and it didn't work out, and you met the salary cap floor. Now you just don't pick up that option for next year and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's probably what could be the case at this point. I mean, so far he has 0 trade value, so rule that out.
Yeah, none trade value except for as an expiring contract, but I don't even know if that's worth anything.
You wouldn't get you crap. It would maybe get you half of a big gulp from 7-Eleven.
And we're in double overtime.
With no ice.
uh,
Boy, that is double overtime of crap.
Oh, this game is terrible. This game is
bad.
It is a battle of the 2 worst point guards in the NBA. But it's just frustrating to watch. I mean, you can take away, like, all right, is you like watching Wendell Carter grow, and you like Zach LaVine putting on an offensive show, but it is sad. It's sad to watch and it's not as fun as I hoped it would be, because Jabari sucks and all the other players you want to see are hurt. Hopefully we got another 4 weeks or so before everybody's back, fingers crossed, and then we could start to see hopefully the growth of this team. And I honestly, I talked at the beginning of the season, my prediction was that they were going to steal that 8th seed because the East is bad, not because they're good. But honestly, I'd much rather them this year be a lottery team than get the 8th seed, because there's no way that they're going to make any noise in the playoffs. So you might as well get in the lottery and get a crapshoot for a top 3 pick, and continue to add talent that way.
Yeah, I mean that's all I got that I could hope for at this point.
Well, I don't really have anything else. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, not really.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please make sure you hit us up on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Hit subscribe however you listen to the podcast, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. And your job this week is to make sure you share this show with at least one friend who is a Chicago sports fan. Thank you guys so much for listening again. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.